be bigger. Are we rolling?
Yep.
Lights, camera, action. Okay. Welcome to the North Ogden City Planning Commission meeting tonight. It's August 16th. I'm Vice Chairman Mason. I'll be conducting the meeting in the absence of Commissioner Thomas today. With the exception of Commissioner Thomas, it looks like we have a full body here. Am I correct in that?
We're full, but whether a body or not, I don't know.
Thanks. Well, I welcome you and thank you for attending tonight. Let's get things started by an invocation or thought by me, which came as a surprise to me, followed by the leading of the Pledge of Allegiance from Commissioner Watson, and I'll go ahead and offer a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're really grateful this evening to gather as a governing body in the city of North Ogden. We're grateful for the area in which we live and the many wonderful things this community offers. We're grateful for the residents of this community and their involvement in our city and the various activities and programs our city puts on. We pray that we can have that guidance and wisdom to keep a sense of unity with one another, that we can have an open and honest discussion with one another where our various opinions are shared. We pray that we may be wise in all things and keep the interests of all in mind. We ask for those favors and blessings in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We've already had our roll call. Let it be noted, please, that Commissioner Thomas is excused. And aside from that, the rest of the body is here. Leads us into approving our minutes from the past few planning commission meetings. It's been a while since we've gathered. Looking for a recommendation to approve or deny those minutes or amend them.
You're testing our memory skills, right?
I read them this afternoon.
I make the motion we approve the minutes for May 3rd, 2023 and June 7th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or addendums to that? Okay, let's just do a voice vote. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let it be noted that was a unanimous pass. Brings us to our ex parte communications or conflict of interest to disclose. Be there any among this body? For items on the agenda or anything else we need to disclose? Okay, there be none. We'll move on to our public comments. We ask that public comments that are specific to an agenda item be reserved for that time when it's a little more pertinent, but if there be any public comments at this time, please bring them forward. And John, do we have anybody online?
Not right now.
Okay, so we have no participation online. We'll pause for a second to allow public comment. Okay, public comments pass with none. Bringing us to item number 5, an administrative item. Scott Hess will be presenting consideration and action on a preliminary approval of Patriot Point Phase 3. Scott.
Thank you, Planning Commission members. What we have before you today is preliminary approval Phase 3 of Patriot Point subdivision. This is 6.28 acres and represents a portion of the project. If you'll remember, we actually looked at this as a body and we did a preliminary approval of phases 1 through 3. But at the time, it was just the subdivision blocks themselves and not the roadway dedication. So the things that trigger subdivisions to come in front of the Planning Commission are subdivisions that are over 10 lots or subdivisions that dedicate new roadways. So administratively, we can't dedicate 2300 north, 150 east. Had we gone back and looked at phases 1 through 3, we probably could have dedicated the roadways, but it would have brought up questions about timing of the improvements of the roadways and escrows and a bunch of other things. So this is a little bit like cart before the horse, but we actually received the final plat application from the applicant on Phase 3, which we've been reviewing as a final plat. And before we can give that notice of decision, it needs to come before you, dedicate the roadway, and then we have a few final drainage and water detention things to figure out is kind of the main point that we just met with the applicant on Monday on.
So are we looking for site plan approval and preliminary approval?
So we'll
So
start
item
with,
5 and 6, the same thing.
correct, they're separate items, they're individual, but we'll look for preliminary subdivision plat approval for this item. And then in that subdivision plat application was embedded the site plan itself. So they're two unique applications, and we'll talk about the issues separately among the two of them. So inside here, the development agreement is what we live by. It's a little different than the code, but it does say that in recital D, subdivisions, site plans, there's a few items that have to come before you and they meet the city code. So otherwise things just go straight to the council. And we have, staff has reviewed this from just a standard subdivision standpoint, which would be, are the lots the right size? It's a private, mostly a private development, private roadways, internal networks. So we focused on whether or not the streets were the right size. And there's some, there have been lots of drawings. This is a project that's been gone on for a long time. So there are some call outs that we found with some inconsistencies. 150 East has been right on all of them. That's a 66-foot right of way. 2300 tears down from a 66-foot right of way down to a 60-foot right of way. And I think what we determined is that that's supposed to happen on the west side of 150 East. So in the staff report, it's called out that that needs to be a 66-foot right of way. But as that road enters west into Harrisville City, the road is 60 feet wide there. So 150 East becomes a good intersection point to actually narrow the roadway, so you don't end up with a wider road that then chokes down or narrows at a lot line or some other private street designation, something like that. So there's an inconsistency in the staff report that I would pull. That's recommended item number 2 to update the design of 2300 North to 66 feet wide and ensure that all building setbacks meet requirements. But I will substitute that recommended condition of approval and say that, and we'll talk about this in the site plan, that 2300 North is designed in our general plan as a trail. It's an east-west trail in the city. The trails that happen on public streets end up as 6-foot wide sidewalks, and we'd recommend that 6-foot wide sidewalk still go in, which will require on the southern line of, on the northern line of 2300 North, in the property will require a right here, a 1-foot public utility or 1-foot essentially pedestrian easement, so that the 6-foot wide sidewalk can retain, remain in the 60-foot right of way, but 1 foot of it will be sitting over on the private property owner's property. So we could make it a 61-foot right of way, or we can do a 60-foot with this like little easement where the sidewalk actually lives on their property a little bit. It really doesn't matter which way we do it. We've done it both ways in the city. 2850 actually has a portion of roadway that looks this way where the sidewalk sits in an easement. That's how, like Coldwater Animal Hospital, we would potentially pick up some sidewalk maybe from them in that same way. But at any rate, 2300 here will be a slightly narrower road than 2300 is from 150 East out to Washington Boulevard, but we still want to retain that sidewalk. Otherwise,
Do you happen to know if the developer has a preference on which direction to go there with the 1-foot easement?
just in speaking to them on Monday, the 1-foot easement is the way that they recommended they draw the final plat. So whichever way, I'd say planning commission, to make it easy, probably should just recommend that the 6-foot wide sidewalk on 2300 North be acknowledged as part of the general plan process and required. And then whatever approval vehicle we need to do on that road right of way, we'll make sure it happens. Otherwise, there's really no other major issues. There are some internal design and drainage issues that we have with the subdivision. This is the city's pond project to the east of 150, where we'll be doing a new detention basin, public amenity. It'll have, a water pond. It'll have a public space people can go and utilize. And this is water that's being moved from 2600 North south down into this new area. And then the result of that is that property up on 2600 North will eventually be redeveloped in part of our commercial corridor. The elevation numbers here versus the detention basins are a little bit off. The developer, kind of had planned on using our detention basin as part of their water detention system, but it looks like they may be a little bit too high or too low for us to get the water to drain in there, which may result in some shifting of buildings up here. And that would be a minor site plan correction. And we'll have to determine by the MPC code at the time that that happens, whether or not it constitutes more than 5% change. And that's the amount that the mayor and I, through the MPC process, can make minor amendments. The number of
Even if they're given final approval tonight.
yeah, so if they're given final approval tonight, the NPC code allows us to make these minor changes. If they're not substantive, and we've done this in places like parking inevitably gets moved because there's a better reason to do in one spot or another, or garbage enclosures are another thing that moves, minor tweaks in, open space or like building footprints, like for the community building here. Things that would be or that would be substantive would be reduction in total number of parking that's required by the development agreement or total number of units, major architectural design changes on the buildings, those sorts of things would come back to the planning commission for your consideration. But otherwise in the subdivision, we don't see a whole lot of other issues. There's a handful of pending items on our engineer reports letter, but they're all related to improvement drawings, which don't change the layout and siting of the buildings and everything. And really, planning commission, for the most part, for the subdivision, can ignore all of these private streets and the locations of these buildings. And as the plat is really 2300 north and 150 east. So with that, I'll take any questions, and we do have applicant representative Janine Blatcher with us tonight.
Okay, prior to any questions, would the applicant care to address us?
You want my name and address too?
Please, yeah.
Geneva Blanchard, 1352 West, 1050 North. I don't have much to say other than we would prefer the 1 foot pedestrian easement over the change in the right of way, just to keep the similarity in the whole thing. That'll allow us to have the same park strip width the whole way. So we prefer that. So it will look all the same, and then we'll just push the 6 foot sidewalk a foot into our property. So, but I don't have anything else. Scott explained it.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we told the public to hold their comments for any particular items. Do we have any other public comments to this item? Okay, with that, we'll close the public comments and open this up for discussion and questions to Scott. Lively bunch tonight.
No, I think we're okay to go along with these with the way they want it. There'd be no issue.
Yeah, that's an easy
Yeah.
way to solve that.
Okay. If it works good for them, I have no problems.
Roughly how big is the detention pond?
One
The
hours
one
or
that we're moving, essentially the new place, and I can see how big the old
it's
one's.
about 6.5 acres, and the water total depth at full bowl is like 15 feet deep, and it will cover several of those acres. There's some parking over there, there's some green space, but it's covering
Pretty big.
4 acres of.
That's big.
I have so many questions about that, but it's not real pertinent to this.
When do we expect that to be done?
of John. It's taken a long time to get through the design phase, and it's going through, it's.
Can we table that and talk about it at the end of the meeting?
That's a good idea.
No, that's because it's really not, in my opinion, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
But it is
neighboring.
interesting.
It's very interesting. It's very dear to my heart also, and I'd love to know more about it. If we could hold that for remarks at the end of the meeting, then we can respect these guys' time and get going. Is that all right?
And there are pictures of it in our packet, just from our
Well, it's gotta be
marketing.
great marketing for you guys. Yeah. So if you're interested, we'll get an update on that at the end of the meeting. Ms. Blanchard.
Well, I'll make a motion that we grant preliminary approval of phase 3 of the Patriot Point subdivision, subject to the city engineer's design memo and the development agreement, but with one change to the condition of approval to update the design of 2300 North Street to accommodate the conformance to our trail system by adding at least a 1 foot pedestrian easement to that 60-foot wide street. Does that cover it?
Is at least where do we want to go with that?
what?
She said at least a 1 foot. Does that give you enough
Um,
direction, or do you want her to say 1 foot?
1 foot.
Can you amend your motion?
Okay, I'll amend my motion to say 1 foot instead.
We don't give city staff too much power there.
I'll second that.
Up to 30 feet.
Between 1 and 30 feet.
I mean, it doesn't hurt a number shows on the building, does it?
Now we got comments.
Now you're living in the building.
Wait, just make your heart race just a little.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion about that? Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote. Commissioner Barker, how do you vote?
Yes,
Sorry, yes,
Your last name was failing me.
great.
Commissioner Green, you're a yes? I apologize for that.
No, you're fine.
Commissioner Nancarrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, it's unanimous pass. Okay, I will segue nicely into item number 2. Sorry about that. Mr. Hess, are you prepared to?
Yeah, I'm just finding where the next one starts. and
Yeah, it's what we use.
There's a lot of development agreement.
Mhm.
It's a scroll.
Talk about the pond while he does that.
124 page.
Okay, so the site plan approval. So the applicant has also applied for site plan approval. This is another one as noted in the development agreement. For me, John, it starts on page 35 of the 206-page packet. In the PDF at least. Site plan approval is one of the items in the development agreement that needs to come before you. I think, I could be wrong, but I think this item was missed back in 2021 in the transition of Rob Scott to me, and there was also there were some things happening with the building footprints themselves, so I came back in front of planning commission and city council on the building footprints, but I'm thinking in phase 1B, we actually didn't do this step, and we've issued building permits. There's nothing, you're not gonna go back and do anything different, but for all phases moving forward per the development agreement, we'll bring to you the site plan. In the MPC code, the development agreements really rule what you do. There's a lot of information in the master plan community zone, but you really lean heavily on the development agreement. So in this case, it's leaning back on this concept plan that was approved at the time. And it shows a community clubhouse. Here's that pond property here. The things that aren't completely shown here on the colored site plan are like detention basins, and there's some surface parking, some minor surface parking that's in here that we went through and counted the numbers on. So this is a really simple item because there were no changes. So the buildings conform to the footprints that were approved in 2021, which were a revision of the footprints that moved from this concept plan to the actual architectural drawings. And there were some minor, like between 1 and 3 feet on these large 5 and 8-plex buildings, some minor differences. So numbers of units are the same, number of provided parking is the same. We're working with the city engineer to assure that all of the surface water ends up in a detention basin somewhere on site and operates and functions properly. And the things that might shift from what I had heard on Monday is it's possible that these 2 4-plex buildings get pushed together to create a little space for some detention up here. And then the location of these 5 buildings in this parking, or 5 units in this parking, may flip-flop on site so that the detention would be further east, which works better for drainage and the overall site just by elevation. Those are pretty minor when you look at the entirety of the site, so it's likely those will be in the 5%, but we'll run a calculation, make sure and see if it has to come back. Staff really doesn't have any other major items on this. We did talk about the trail system. We had the general plan noted in here. So 2300 North shall be designed to accommodate a 6-foot wide trail on one side of the right of way. I believe that's on the north side of 2300. And then a detailed landscape plan will be submitted, is recommended to be submitted for review and implementation at the time of the building permits, with final occupancy of each building requiring completion of the landscaping improvements around it. I don't know if anyone's driven around Patriot Point, but it's Crockett and Kohler will continue to build those, right? And they're gonna put the landscaping in as one, similar unit. So they have a landscaping plan. What's gone in looks really nice, and they're being diligent to put that in with the completion of each of those buildings as they lease them up. So staff really doesn't have any concerns about that, and we don't have a whole lot of specifics that we want to get out of the landscape plan. So unless the planning commission wants to see a detailed landscaping plan before approving the site plan, staff feels comfortable with reviewing those at the time of the building permit. With that, I'll take any questions.
I do have one, and I should have raised this during preliminary because it's regarding the street on 2300. I'm assuming that's not going to allow on-street parking. It doesn't seem like it's wide enough. 60 feet.
6 feet.
60-foot right of way, you could put on street parking.
Okay, my concern with, and it's involving the pond, which I didn't want to talk about. But the street with the pond, what are we gonna do about overflow parking when the pond gets heavy usage? And so I want to know if we can park down the street and or, I mean, I see a time when somebody brings a trailer with some kayaks, they can't get in that parking lot and then they want it, or if they're too long for that parking lot, they can on-street parking or something like that. So I just want to make sure we're wide enough on that street for that.
Yeah, and 2300 being a 66-foot right of way would be 36 feet of asphalt. That's 2 travel lanes, 24-foot travel lanes, and then a 7-foot parking on each side. So you'll be able to have cars parked on both sides and still get cars through the middle, all but like the very widest vehicles. So I would say most of the overflow parking will probably end up on 2300, and there's a pretty good stretch here that is unencumbered, other than what's not shown on this site plan is the parking for their community building, which is this little asset here, and is right there. So there's another little drive approach. I don't know what the total number of parking stalls is at the community pond, but I imagine that it's being parked like a trailhead would be parked. So,
And that's not up for, I mean, that's not the site plan review we're doing tonight, but I want to make sure the road is sufficient for that amenity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This stretch of 2300 is still 66 feet.
yeah, I'm
it's
sorry,
not-
no, I'm meaning 150, I apologize. 2300 goes 66 foot from 150 east here, east towards Washington Boulevard, which is out in this
Oh.
area. It's at the intersection of the little pair down. So west of that intersection for this couple hundred feet here is where it's 60-foot right of way, which
Okay.
is what will connect into Harrisville and be 60-foot right of way. It's 150 east that's designed as a 66-foot right of way, and that's the entire length of it, running the whole way. So there'll be surface.
And again, I'm the one who didn't want to talk about this.
Well,
during
but
this time.
I think
Yeah.
I think there's an element that's relevant, especially for this audience, right? Like
Well-
they sell or rent these units and their name is associated with it. And all of a sudden they have a cluster that they're tied to because we didn't think and talk about parking for this. I think I think it is relevant.
Yeah, I agree. And sorry for my earlier comment about that, but because how I envision this working even more successfully is a load unload zone for boats and things. If this is what I think it is, and it's gonna have kayaks and stuff, like a roundabout, you come and you drop off your kayak and then you park maybe down the road, maybe a mile away on a busy day in July. And you walk back where you dropped your boat off. So I want to make sure that we can park on the road, we park around the corner,
There's gonna be a lot of
because Patriot Point's
paddleboards on
tight.
it. There's gonna be a
Right,
lot of paddleboards on it.
That's quite an impact on the community. Cause you think of what's happened out to Will, the pond out there,
It's
what's happened to the community out there, there's no parking, not enough parking.
it's an impact, but it's also a great benefit.
It
And,
is.
and I'll mention this again, but the last thing that Brent Taylor ever said to me was what a fantastic asset this would be to the families in North Ogden. And I completely agree. And I want to see it happen.
But we
But I wanna
want
see it good.
to, yeah, we want to make sure it's an asset to people who live right next to it. too.
That's right.
Can I comment on that?
As long as, well, I shouldn't say sure. that's
So
not my role.
technically no, but come on,
Oh, why can't I comment on that?
because we hadn't opened it for public
Oh,
comments.
sorry, okay. So the 66-foot right of way on these two, we feel great about because you can have adequate parking, you can still move traffic. For our setbacks in buildings, like how tight it is over there, this has to stay 60 feet on our side. Otherwise, we shift buildings, we lose, it would actually affect our building number at that point. So, and in the whole process of this, when we had it preliminarily approved, that was the cut line, and that's why that's the 60 foot, and our whole 197 units have been designed based on that road. So if, you know, talking about expansion of that portion in our realm would cut our units, and that would cause.
Are you talking expansion of 2300?
Well, just, yeah, adding, so where it intersects 150, if you were saying, because if I'm getting the gist of what you're saying, of the 66 foot right of way continuing south, that would throw off our whole, that would shift stuff just enough to throw off all the.
For
buildings.
clarity, the gist of what I'm saying is that if we're gonna have an amenity that's gonna draw lots of people, we need to have a road that's wide enough
Yes,
to support it.
and the 66 is definitely, we feel great about that. From our tenants inside, not intruding on our tenants and leases and all of that, definitely.
Thank you.
So on two sides of that pond, it would be a 66 foot road that could potentially have parking.
So well, I mean, I don't think we have much of an issue here. I don't think, because my question was, can we park along 2300? And I think the answer was yes. And as long as that's a true statement, I'm of the opinion that we're fine. We can continue to park on 2300. People can wrap the corner and probably park along Washington if they need to, I'm thinking. And then when the site plan for the pond is implemented, it needs to have the right kind of design to allow drop off and stuff for that. That's my thoughts. But I think it's something that is worth discussion, even though it should have been done in preliminary, probably.
Planning commission will get an opportunity to see the pond site plan, just like we
Sure.
did with the 2700 North
Sure.
Trailhead. So we'll see that when the final.
But if there was already a road there that doesn't fit our needs, that's something we need to talk about at this point. I think that's the purpose of planning, is to look forward.
I think 150 is, well, there's only certain roads that you can widen beyond a specific amount now by state code, 150 being one that you probably could. It's on our transportation plan for our general plan, but a 66-foot road will take.
And can you show 150 on there? That's the one that she was mentioning would throw off. the
I'm
whole-
sorry, 150, I keep saying 2300, but 150 being a 66-foot road, that will take like 18,000 annual daily traffic or something like that. I mean, it'll take
Oh, wow.
a huge amount.
That's a lot of
traffic. And so,
But I think the concern from our applicant, and we'll give you a chance to speak to it again, was the widening of the road that's perpendicular to that down below, right?
Which is 23.
Which is 2300. So we've been naming them wrong.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't see any reason to widen 2300 then.
No,
I actually, I'm feeling, I know we're not in discussion, but I think we're okay, but I think that's worth asking the question. Other questions for Mr. Scott prior to public comment? Okay, we open up for public comments. Anything else?
No, I feel great.
Okay. Any other public that cares to comment? Nobody online?
No, sorry. Nope, still just
Okay.
me as the only participant.
Okay, public comments closed. We do run a little bit of a looser body here, and we do sometimes allow for some commentary, so it's welcome. Just raise your hand, let me know if you need to comment, so we're open for discussion. And a motion.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion, we give a site plan approval of Patriot Point Phase 3 located approximately 150 east, 2300 north. I didn't see any changes to that.
I did have a couple of conditions of approval in
Okay.
the staff report.
Oh, yeah, the condition of approval of staff report, thank you. Been too long.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, any other discussion about this? I think we kind of discussed it in the question and answer. Okay, all right, I'm prepared for a vote. Let me start with Ms. Green, because I did not know her name last time. I feel so bad.
Yes.
Green's a yes. Commissioner Barker,
Yes,
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
Mr. Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, that's a unanimous pass. Thanks all. Okay,
I hate to leave you guys, but thank you.
we're gonna be talking about the pond.
I know, sorry.
Missed the stunning conclusion.
Thank you,
Have a good
guys.
night. Okay, item number 7, consideration or action on an amendment to the Village of Providence Point Development Agreement to add a drive-through businesses with a drive-through lane located between the building and the public street as an allowed use. Mr. Hess, you're ready to present on that?
So we have the applicant here with us today, Greg Cronin, the developer with Village of Providence Point. We have consideration, or developer has been working with a number of commercial interests, trying to figure out what to do with the pad sites that are south of the car wash on the west side of Washington Boulevard, between that 1700 North. And it's come up that one of the requirements in the development agreement is that drive-throughs are permitted, but a drive-through where the drive aisle exists between the public road and the building is not permitted. And that's, I think, the reason that the car wash is positioned in the place that it is, the green space between the building and the sidewalk, and that the car wash, everything wraps back around and is internal to the site. And that, it doesn't function for these types of uses. You can create a building like that, but you end up with a kind of teardrop or a figure 8 in the parking lot, and it kills the parking and just the in and out flow of the site. So I believe, and you can talk about this, but they have some commercial interest. It's no secret that those have been hard properties to develop. They've sat there since 2017 when the project was entitled. And so staff is of the opinion that I think getting some development down in that area would be really beneficial to just seeing things come vertical, and then that might help us grow some other development and interest down in that side of Washington Boulevard. The site plan, as it's shown, doesn't have one of the details that had been talked about, and I think that we should discuss as planning commission is a berm element on that east side of the site, and then maybe even some specific like landscape buffering or something else so that it sort of visually obscures those cars on the east side of the drive aisle. But we have this up and down Washington Boulevard. We have it at Nelson Fields and Custard on 2 sides of 2600 and 450 East. Other areas of Washington, all of those, the drive-throughs with the exception basically of Subway, all loop around the buildings. So it's Wendy's does it, McDonald's does it, Beans and Brews does it. So it's not unprecedented on our roadways, and Village of Providence Point, I think at one point was envisioned to have a lot of walkability going in, and that just hasn't really panned out with the developers that have, or the projects that have come to light. So staff sees this as a friendly amendment to get some development done. I think that it doesn't really, it's unfortunate we weren't able to attract the type of development that I think that project originally wanted to do, but I think this is very realistic for the site. And if it helps move the project along, that's really beneficial. And what we all really want is to see Village of Providence Point done. So it's a simplistic amendment to just eliminate that one line about no drive-throughs between the building and the roadway, but we may want to add some recommendation to the council to consider it, because that's what you're doing tonight with this being a development agreement, is you're making a recommendation to the city council on what a berm or other landscaping or visually obscuring that drive-through in some way might look like, if that's of interest to the planning commission. That I'll take any questions or concerns, and we have the applicant there as well.
I'm holding my comments for the comment section.
Is that cool? You're talking about the roadway for the drive-through? Is that the roadway you're talking about? Is that Washington or?
Yeah, so on this here, what you're looking at is Washington Boulevard is right here. So north is to the left. And the car wash would be right here with the building of the car wash about 25 or 30 feet at back of sidewalk. This one would have that same amount of green space, but then a drive aisle between the building and Washington.
How
The way
wide would
that
that
current-
wide would that green space be?
It might be on the site plan there, if I can zoom in and see.
20 feet, 25 feet, I can't remember. There is a white number. 20.
3 foot or?
And this one is, yeah, it is indicated with a 3-foot berm along there, and then I think, yeah, it's 20 feet.
Okay.
Are there any other clarifying questions prior to our discussion?
Mine is a comment question slash question, I guess, but the comment is, this seems a lot safer than having the drive-through go around the front of the building. So why is that there?
Can we hold that for, well,
Comment?
for discussion? Well, okay, go ahead.
That's fine, I can hold it. I mean, yeah,
Because I could debate that all day, I think, but I.
challenge accepted. Okay, I thought you might.
No, I think why is it there is a purpose question. So,
Why is what?
Why is there a rule right now that says that can't be on the outside of the building?
Well, originally, when Village of Providence Point was first conceived of, it was going to be this walkable center. So the buildings that you would have gotten there would have been like the cannery extended, this street wall with form-based code type of buildings, and it's.
one of the principles of walkability is doors face the road.
Right.
And so your foot traffic goes right in, okay? So now you've got street, sidewalk, lane of traffic, right, and then a building. And so,
Okay.
so it's different than a walkability.
Okay, no, that completely answers my question.
The
In
car
the
wash
original
kind of made a
design,
bad deal
all
for
of the potential units that were gonna be built behind it, like high
Yeah.
density, that we wanted all the parking behind, so when, like, as you drove down Washington Boulevard, it would be kind of a different
Yeah.
aesthetic than a bunch of parking lots and fast food places. But it doesn't seem to have panned out, and
Right.
we were working on that when I joined this 6 years ago.
Well, I have my comment carry on that too. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant first and then any public. Did you get your
Yeah,
question
yeah.
answered, everyone? I don't want to hold out any clarifying questions from anyone. Okay.
I love to hear the comments because then I can talk about it if I hear about it.
I'll tell you what, we'll,
But I'll share with you a couple things first.
let's get your name and,
I'm Greg Cronin.
and your residency.
My residency is Provo. I
Okay.
live Devon, specifically 284 North Marcus.
I think we're fine.
And no, I appreciate the beginning of the discussion. I really do. Because one thing is I don't think we've given up on what y'all were trying to do. I mean, we've kind of come in and tried to revitalize that a little bit. In fact, this specific area right here, if you'll pan out a little bit, if you don't mind, Scott, I guess I need to stay closer to here because it's where the camera is. But you see to the right of this particular pad is our main entrance into Providence Point. There, and you'll have sidewalks going right there down that entrance into the area. And you'll go to the left and you'll come right into that'll be the front facing component right here. This right here will actually be an outdoor dining kind of area that can be seats and stuff that people can come up and eat and do things there. And I'm trying to be conscious of the camera. Is there anybody online?
It's actually
Okay.
behind you right there.
Okay,
so
I just want to make sure I wasn't
it's
leaving people
got your
online.
good side.
You're online now.
But right here, we've got that, and then the ability to have dining here. And then we've designed this where we pulled everything that would start kind of like the stacking. Look at it, we have a lot of cars here. It depends on what tenant we get. Typically 3 to 4 cars, code requires 3. But we've got, when you get to 1, 2, 3, you're right here. 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got ample stacking, but the key is that we're gonna maintain glass around this whole area and not make it appear as though it's the back of a drive-through. That's not the intent. We mentioned that with Scott, because this is our gateway into the community. And so this corner is kind of the gateway, and it has the seating and this is a 3-tenant building. You'd have a drive-through tenant and the 2 other tenants that could go in it. So that it creates more of a busy type of activity, not just a single purpose, or we'll get a larger like cafeteria, or we'll get something bigger, or we'll get a combination of a couple. And so the safety issue is true. If we run drive-throughs on this side, it just really convolutes everything. You have to walk across them if you're trying to go into the building. You can't pull around here and you'd have all the parking along Washington, which is not what you want. So here you're only gonna have the with the berm that we did include, thanks Scott, he mentioned that earlier, so we did include it on this drawing. This was updated just last week. But it kind of gives that where you don't even really see the roadway itself, you just kind of look at the building. And so it creates that a little more aesthetics. And so we are berming, and then we'll let the landscape plan go through city as they look at the site plan and determine what kind of, needs to be shrubs that aren't completely impeding the building, but something nice. So we've looked at this, we've included the 10-foot sidewalk that goes along Washington and this as well to keep that walkability. But people can literally just walk here, come in and go in the front, or kind of in this entrance area, past this. So I thought that might help with a little of the conversation. When we had only one down here, it just didn't work. This provides straight into the drive-through. Everybody parks, walks straight in the building. It's just the absolute most efficiently designed safety for a product. And it allows for there to be three uses inside that building without any conflicting concerns. So we do believe, we actually already have pretty good interest. They said as soon as we get this approved and we have kind of a schedule as to when it would be built, that we've got tenants that are looking now saying, we'd like to look at that building. But as soon as you get your approvals and we have a constructability timeframe, we'll move forward on some LOIs. So it's picked up some interest up here.
That's great.
So I'll be answering any other questions you might have. I just really wanted to talk to that Prominence Point overall. And if you want to ask me general questions about Prominence, you're welcome to tonight, even though it's not specific to the site plan. I know it's been a thing within the city. We adopted it. I've been through it with the mayor a couple times and councils, and we continue to refine it. But I think you'll find that, short of the money shrinking and not being available very quickly on our pre-approved loans we had, we're now having to fund locally versus nationally. So it's slowed our project down a little bit, but our intents and our plans have not altered. We're continuing forward with the same idea of large open spaces and consolidating the 24 buildings down to now 14 to open up a lot more greenery and space for parks and things of that nature. So we're trying to create a much more walkable, livable, kind of enjoyable environment than what was there before. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, I'll get you a question. So, and I just remind the council that we're obviously not approving this site plan. What we're approving is an amendment to the development agreement of Prominence Point. So this particular developer could walk away and the next person would be held to the standard which we approve here tonight, or don't approve, okay? But my question to you, sir, would be, if we move forward on this and we ask for a berm, excuse me, between your building and the road, is that a?
It's actually already on that plan. That's what he's zoned in and saw it. We already put it in the plan.
So that's something we could
He
write.
just didn't
into.
realize I'd already updated the plan, because we had a conversation. I tried to listen to what he shared and then incorporate it. And I sent him this one a couple days ago, and we've incorporated the berm and stuff.
Okay.
I mean, we want it to be aesthetically pleasing. It is our gateway to the rest of the
So
community.
it's in the landscaping along there will be pretty nice. They've done pretty good work for it.
Yeah, there'll be a landscape plan turned into the site plan that'll need to be approved. So
Okay.
it'll be seen by the city and approved as a site plan.
Okay.
This is just allowing us to just put the drive-through on that side versus the other side. And in this
Okay.
case, we really have like 3 public roads all the way around the building. So it kind of creates a box for us there, which doesn't work.
Well, and if this ends up being the first thing that's developed there, like you said, it's a gateway to showing people, it's like doing it. How the first house in subdivision is cheapest, the last lot's the most expensive, you would have motivation to make that look.
I think he's actually talking, if I'm reading that right, that would be the last thing that's developed there, because you'd have the car wash, his proposed development, and then the road,
Above the
right?
Oh, I think he's.
west of that.
Yeah.
Oh, west.
On the other side of the street.
Okay, coming down the street.
Yep, the stuff west of it. I mean, there's still
Yeah,
plenty of space
sure.
that needs to be developed inside of Prominence Point. This is the gateway to get to those other lots. Everyone will
Yeah.
drive past it.
That's right. And we did comment to Scott that we intend to have a good bit of glass on that whole end. It's not going to be just the back wall of the drive-through. It's not.
Yeah.
So if we were to write verbiage into that, said we need a facade or glass or something, that's something that would still work for you.
It's already in the code, I think, for 60%, I think.
So, yeah.
It's already in the code. I mean, what we're doing is we're just ensuring, I guess we're reminding people that there is code when you have that big of a face on that side that we're gonna be putting glass. It's not, we just don't want somebody to think that it can be developed where it's just a brick wall. Because it can't by your code already. It's gonna have, we're gonna have a substantial blast, plus with 3 tenants to that area when we spec this building and we build it for its longevity of maybe a change out of tenants over the years. It needs to be built to accommodate 3 tenants, not just the drive-through on the end. So it's gonna be a complete building. It's not as though we're doing a solo drive-through down there.
Yeah.
Once the code requires us to meet certain standards on the design.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other public comments or anybody online, John?
Nope.
Okay, all right, commissioners. Pass this one out.
I mean, as proposed like that, it kind of makes sense. I wouldn't have any objection to it. I think it still meets the basic vision that we had years ago, but you know, I think at some point I'd just like to see something done there.
So would we.
Well, were it not for the car wash, I think I would be firm on that needs to be walkability with businesses close to the road and doors and nothing between the sidewalk and the door, including a lane of traffic. Were it not for the car wash, I think I would hold to that. And I think we made a mistake by allowing that car wash there. I think
I don't think the planning commission had any say.
Well, I don't think that was our recommendation, but you know.
That was the
ultimately, it's
city
not our decision.
council.
right. But given, and the car wash's argument, I remember at the time was, hey, we're next to a tire store.
Right.
It's gonna be loud, and so it was difficult, but my vision for that area was walkability, and that's how it was presented and sold to the residents. So I'm gonna be maybe the lone negative Nelly here. Well, I don't know if I'm a dissenter, I'm just commenting right now. In the fact that, you know, when that amount of density came in, there was a lot of fear and I don't know what the word is, anxiety in the community about, oh my gosh, little Manhattan, people were calling it and all sorts of things that were extremism, right? I don't know if you guys remember that, but the vision that was presented was, well, hey, this is also gonna be this walkable, you can go down and get an ice cream and you know, craft at this other store and stuff, and so, and those stores just haven't come, so. I mean, there is that, you know, we are abandoning the original design, and there's a reason I think this was left out, so I'm not saying we shouldn't change that tonight, but I just want that at least to be stated that, you know, that wasn't what was presented probably 7 years ago to the community.
You know, I think that's such a valid point because I've become a little jaded on this whole project. And I know we have a lot of new planning commissioners since a lot of the original discussion of the whole, I guess, the holistic look of how this entire development was going to play out. And when you have that many sort of high-end apartment buildings and townhouses and, you know, retirement community and stuff, all, you know, there's a tremendous amount of people that would potentially, you know, once those people are there, obviously those commercial properties would be pretty hot commodities to build commercial properties there. But the first part never came, so the commercial never came. That's in my mind. This is my own interpretation. So now I feel like, well, do we adjust sort of the standards or whatever that we had initially to draw this commercial property?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know.
I think the condos themselves, there just ended up being kind of a toxic relationship between the developer and
Agreed.
the condo, and that just created this inherent problem. But if you look at the other things, you know, the car wash, I agree with what they said,
Yeah,
you know, but the lodge is nice.
it is.
And you have people who live in this community who've decided to move their parents into that, who drive down there almost on a daily basis. You see cars coming in and out of that. And the people who live there, they pay a little bit more money to live in that building than they would in a building that's not quite as nice. And so there is traffic there. There's also a stoplight there. And that's you know, the people who are probably looking at these potential tenants are like, hey, this is something to work with there. You know, I would be really curious to know, now that we've had some years to see, okay, there was this toxic relationship, hopefully that you know, whatever.
We'll
These
value.
learnings that we've had,
Right.
based on the economy right now, money's a little harder to come by. Like, what are the types of people, you know, these pads that are done, because there's still a lot of pads out there. There's a lot of dirt that needs to be turned. Who's interested?
Yeah.
Who wants to move
You know,
there?
I think if the apartments were all there, the answer to that question might be different than it is right now.
Yeah,
But those apartments aren't there.
no,
So I think, you know, the question before us then is like, do we sort of like adjust our way of thinking? And I think ultimately that's maybe what the city council did when they looked at that car wash.
yeah.
It was new people and, you know, city
Something.
council members come and go, planning commissions come and go, you know, members. And so I think we have to evolve too with what's going on with that project. So I guess I'm not opposed to this.
You know, I don't necessarily think I am either. I'll think out loud here for a second.
And I don't think it's a fall on our sword, go
no.
back to the original plan either.
I keep thinking, what do the residents want? What do the
Yeah.
residents of North Ogden want?
Mhm.
And I think for the past like 5 or 6 years, every time we said Village of Prominence Point, we had 30 people in the room and there was a
Yeah.
lot of anger and passion, okay?
Right.
The fact that nobody's here tonight, honestly, now granted, it's the summer and hopefully people have better things to do, but they're uneducated people down there and they definitely know, and they've been notified, right, because we notify them that there was a hearing, right? Right? So the fact that nobody showed up here with pitchforks and knives, because we said the word Village of Prominence Point, tells me that I'm hoping there's a little bit of apathy to this,
Yeah.
which means that they're not opposed. Right?
Okay.
I told you I was gonna think out loud. Bear with me.
You
Going on the
described
live.
exactly my feeling on that.
I think I would just say, this seems like a fairly minor change, maybe not when you look at it through the historic lens, but when you look at it just right here today, that seems very reasonable to get these, you know, spots in, get some development going. And with some landscaping / berming, it's not going to be an eyesore, which I think would be obviously a fair concern. So,
Yeah. I agree.
That's
I
why,
think
that's
it
why I
works.
asked about
I
the
think it does too.
landscaping. If the landscaping does right, it won't be that big a deal.
right.
Agree.
I don't think it affects our walkability to the extreme there because we're in the corner. And
Right.
so I think this is a win-win. I think that it works.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not a fan of drive-throughs either. People sit in their cars and idle. But if you're gonna have one, that makes perfect sense. I like that it's hidden with the berm. It just, to me, I think if we're looking for tenants there, then we need to maybe bring it down and make it a little easier for them to come in.
I had the pleasure of walking along Washington Boulevard this afternoon and it was loud as hell.
Yeah.
And, right, so.
I'm not
some-
gonna improve those minutes next time.
But I'm just thinking of berm and even a line of cars. Does act as a buffer between a highway and a building. And I'm actually probably, I was gonna be stand on my hill and die on. it.
gonna debate me.
Well, that's a good point. I think there are other communities that, you know, at least I'm familiar with and maybe some would. The thing I'm thinking about is some development like in the Boise area, like Eagle Road. Eagle Road's a very busy road, but you have a lot of this type of stuff. And you have tenants that moved in and it just softens it a little bit. You know, it
That,
makes
that
it-
has like the berming on the side,
Yeah,
right?
and it's
Like-
huge berms,
Yeah.
but it's really busy, but you have hotels that are in there, you have drive-throughs like this, and it's worked pretty well. You know, and people do walk around.
Yeah, it may not be a bad thing to think about with Washington, that berming ability for us to fill out some of the
Yeah,
property.
I mean, the people are gonna want signage, right? So the people who are driving down that major road can kind of see, that's gonna be an appeal to the tenants, but like, that's, you know.
That's, I have a hard time with walkability when people won't even walk from Ace to Smith.
Yeah,
Well, they park at Ace and they drive over to Smith.
The reason they don't walk is because we haven't built,
Right.
the design wasn't there to promote walking.
We didn't put a
That's one of
belt
the
in there, they just
reasons.
stand
Yeah,
on
the
and
cars.
cruise along on the belt.
Well,
I mean, when it's just a bunch of asphalt, that doesn't really promote walkability.
but I would say this, that even in our community, I live on 2600. And we now have an ice cream shop that on Monday will start selling burgers.
Yeah,
People walk to the library and they are walking. They are sitting outside.
And there's no sidewalk there.
Yeah, and there's no sidewalk there. Like, like kids will move around and there are scooters and there are easier ways to get around. There's motorized stuff, like thinking that the complete car culture that we've had of the past will be what we see in the future. And I agree. I even think about, like, at the first of this, I was like, yeah, I mean, are people really gonna walk on that part of Washington Boulevard? But then when I start thinking about people walking internally there, like walking over and then parking in one spot and getting something and then going to another place, that's when I thought about Eagle Road, and I'm like, oh no, I see that. I see how that was kind of brought together to, so, I don't know that we know the answer.
And I think he said they still had the either 10 or 12 foot sidewalk on Washington Boulevard on the outside of the berm.
Yeah.
Because you know what
Yeah.
we're envisioning for the future is, you know, all of these apartment buildings here, the ones that are supposed to go down south of the movie theater.
Yep.
You know, there's gonna be potentially a lot of people walking to these
Oh, yeah.
businesses to grab a burger or a coffee or whatever, you know.
But the developer's gonna need a gateway
Yeah,
to show that, because he looks at that car
I
wash.
agree.
and it's what's cars, it's a sign, you know, sorry.
It's the car wash.
Yeah.
I don't share your passion with
Yeah,
car
but,
wash.
but anyway, there's just something about it that feels, and if some more dirt can be moved and something could be a gateway, if I was a developer, I would look at that and say, all right, I can sell this stuff. I got people who come in.
Yeah.
To me, I think some of the frustrations you might have with the car wash are because of this non-drive-through in front of the, you know, I mean, the way that it's situated is the way that it had to be situated because there's not drive-through in front.
Mhm.
Probably couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, maybe we look at that and go, okay, you know, if we change it on this, it makes more sense. And I appreciate the historical view, like if we take history out of it and say, if this were in North Ogden, would you allow a drive-through in front of it? And it would be absolutely no brainer.
I mean, can we ask, I don't know, probably the applicant, developer, whatever,
Right.
who is interested in these? Like, who really wants to come and move dirt here?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things I might comment. One of them actually is.
If we're gonna ask for a comment, you wanna step up to the mic
I
so the
mean,
public
yeah,
can get it?
I'm just like,
Sorry, Nathan.
help me help you however you want to. I'm happy to share anything. But one of the comments are is that, you know, we have drive-throughs, you know, that one's kind of obvious. You can think through all the different drive-throughs that are around, but the ones next to it, you know, a lot of times it's ice cream stores. It's that kind of service, a donut shop or something that kind of fits that
You've seen this,
gateway
Johnson.
in and out of something.
There's a Jimmy John's with two other things out on.
Yeah, and so
There's, right here, there's a coffee shop and a haircut place.
But is there gonna be office space in here too? or is
No,
it
not
all
this one.
windows?
Like this would be like
But
a
the
hair,
rest-
a hair salon maybe, or
Yeah.
hairstylist or a barber or something. Maybe it could be something like that that might join this spot. But do you have the other picture that had the whole commercial area concept picture that I sent to you?
The-
This
It's
is,
in the staff report, so it's up on.
Yeah.
the page.
what, this is really just 3,600 square feet of 30,000 square feet of commercial. This is like 10% of what's gonna be on Washington. We still are planning a larger, more substantial building on the corner where the red light is.
Mhm.
That's more, because we were asked to, we said, look for something that can give us a little more
But what we're,
substantiality.
what we're looking at here isn't this development. It's should we allow a drive-through between a building and the road in the village of Allen's
Fair enough.
Point?
I took us on a tangent, my bad.
On that stretch of Washington Boulevard.
And I sincerely appreciate you staying on point for voting on that tonight. I really do. I mean, I thank you. That is what we're here tonight. But I also want to be available to you for other questions as a public body. And so like when you keep saying there were never apartments, we already have funded the first, 24 plex apartments that you can drive there today and you'll see the pads going in. We just finished, you drive to the back, you'll see the brand new clubhouse we put in that has nice columns. It's significant. It has a kitchenette in it. It can be gathering, has a workout room in it. I mean, it's nice.
That's built already.
That's what we just built. And
Okay,
it's
good,
it's
because I
gonna
know
get
that
its
was-
CO in September.
Right.
And we've communicated with the citizens over there regularly. I do. We have a town hall or a community meeting that's gonna be in that new clubhouse next month in September to kind of give them an idea of what's coming. And they see the quality and the substance of that clubhouse. We're not taking the property in a backwards direction from its intent. We're keeping the quality and we're bringing in buildings that are going to be substantiating, opening up more common spaces, more walkability than was there by far. You were walking between 24 buildings when we got it. That's a lot of big buildings to walk around. Now there's 14, I think. But, and we've added 10% more green space, and we've got the walkways from the back all the way to this building. And so it's kind of like, this is just a something to eat, something to snack on, a service will be right here that'll just kind of accommodate those people.
Yep.
And then as we get into the bigger corner, we're gonna have some office space.
Okay.
We're looking at more retail there. And so we're just trying to attract, and so by breaking ground and just taking this corner that's against the car wash and making it nicer over there and creating that one side of our gateway a little bit, putting our building there is gonna start framing that commercial.
Yep.
And then we're gonna be able to get more interest, because what they wanna see is someone comes to me and asks for space. The first thing they say is, I like the area, I like traffic count, I like the location. When can you open the doors and provide me a lease?
Yeah.
Well, I can't do that until I have a site plan.
Right.
Because that's the first thing I can tell you, that I have a site plan, we'll have it for you in 7.5 months.
Yep.
And they say, okay, I'll sign it all and I'll move in.
Yep.
You know, they just have to see that, because otherwise,
It's got a pencil for them.
yeah, it just
They've
doesn't
got,
make
they've
sense.
got to look at the cash.
So I
flow.
hope that-
I'm really
It's helpful.
thrilled actually to hear that there's progress.
Yeah, and you'll see these three, and we've got 3 more buildings that are literally probably only 60 days behind that,
Awesome.
as far as approvals. And then those will move in maybe 90 days. But by the end of the year, we'll be approved and working on, is it 5 buildings, Scott? 5, the first 5 of those buildings.
That's great.
And we're already in the process of our loan approval for the other 9 buildings. And that's just taking a little longer because of where we are. But that's all in active progress.
Fantastic.
So I hope that, I know it's deviating from the agenda, but I hope it was helpful to you. as
Very
well.
It actually was very helpful.
Because I feel, and I want y'all to see this as a turnaround success, not as a diminishing of what you expect.
Yeah.
That's our goal, is to try to take you there.
Thank you, sir.
Is this what you were looking for, Greg?
I like that.
Is this the rendering you were looking for?
Yeah, I was just gonna, well,
This one's reversed, so north now. is
this
to
was the one
right,
we've
but-
kind of changed a little bit. That had a double drive-through, which we shrunk it to the 1. We did something, I was going down here, if you saw it, you don't have the rest of it. You just took part of it, I think.
Yeah.
This is one of the buildings that's, crossed away from it. But then the ones we're doing are right here and right here, right now. And then this is a smaller building that's gonna go after these 2 larger ones. They'll be putting 3 other buildings in. So this is the smaller of the buildings. They all should be there within 12 months, probably, of at least being substantially completed or complete. Will be in that. But this is an office retail that's across the way from it. And then over here is a much larger corner building for your red light over here. So you've got 20,000 commercial right here. Then you've got the smaller 6, and you've got the 36. And that's kind of how that commercial plays out.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Let the record show that Greg promised a donut shop.
I'll put a donut in there, just for anyone who comes and shops there. just grab a donut.
I want a donut shop.
Okay, per our procedures, we'd like to, it helps to have a motion, even if we continue to discuss it and we don't follow that motion, but would anyone care to make a motion for a recommendation to the city council?
I make a motion to add drive-through businesses with a drive-through lane located between the building and the public street as an allowed use.
To make that recommendation to the city
Yeah.
council.
To make
Like
that
to put any
recommendation.
parameters on that, like a berm?
I think it's there, right?
I would
I don't know if
I would specify it, just if you want to, I would specify it so that we can write that language directly into the development.
Okay,
So you want that, this is your motion.
so, no, I agree with the berm I mean, between the road and the drive-through.
I need to make sure this is for Providence Point, not just citywide thing.
This is an adjustment to the development agreement.
Yeah, I want to make sure that's clear.
So
Yep.
Okay, so there's been a lot of talk. Let's clarify this. Okay, so do we need a specific height on the berm?
it's indicated as 3 feet, which meets
30 feet.
the berm requirement along the rest of Washington Boulevard and landscaping standards. So if you drive down right now, there's a berm in front of Smith's and in front of that whole shopping area that was built at the time based on our current design standards. So 3 feet matches what we've done in.
Can I, Commissioner Watson,
So-
clarify your motion? Go ahead.
Yeah. Motion to add drive-through businesses with drive-through lane located between the building and public street with a 3-foot berm as an allowed use. Is that
Can we say,
clear enough?
if the developer wants to do more, can they do more, say at minimum?
Yeah, minimum 3 feet. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for helping me through that one, team.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. Okay. And
So
then,
before the discussion, is that going, make sure that's just for Village Point? Village of Providence Point, not for the whole city?
clarify your motion, was that's a
Is that-
I
recommendation
don't think
for
we
the,
need to clarify the motion because it's a developer agreement.
It's a
Right.
change, it's an amendment to the developers agreement.
Right,
Correct.
okay, then I'm
So
fine.
no need.
well,
Correct.
no, I'm not asking to amend your motion, I'm just clarifying your motion.
Oh,
I just
yeah,
want to
so-
clarify.
So your motion wasn't an amendment to the
No.
development agreement at Village of
Yeah,
Providence.
sorry.
Okay.
Totally, that's
Okay,
understood.
I'm Robert's rules in this tonight, guys. I read the book.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? Thanks for clarifying that, Commissioner Barker. Other discussion? Yeah, in the absence of any other discussion, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Webb, how do you vote?
Yes.
Don't try that again.
Yes.
I've known you for a long time. I knew you pre-puberty and you weren't that high. Okay. Mr. Webb is a yes. Commissioner Nancaro, how do you vote? Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes,
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
and as for me, I was always a yes. I just like dragging the meeting out longer. I'm a yes as well. Okay, so that recommendation to the city council will go forward to the city council, and they have final say on that, as you probably will know. Okay. Let the record show that it was a unanimous decision after lengthy discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Would you like me to stay for the pond discussion, just so you have an audience?
I would like the public to be as comfortable as they'd like
I
to.
have a question for Scott, so I'll wait.
Well, let's move on to public comments. If there be any, nobody online still, great. It is public comments.
You want me to ask Scott's question now? Don't do that. Okay.
Yeah, if that's not for the body, then
No, it's
so,
not.
okay, then let's hold that. Okay, remarks from planning commissioners. I would be interested in hearing the discussion on the pond. Is now an appropriate time for everyone. So that's an item I've wanted to see for 3 or 4 years now. And I've seen the opposition to it, which I felt is irrational. I've seen the legislative problems with it, with Pine View water systems and things. And I was under the impression it was dead in the water.
I know.
No pun intended.
This pond issue originally, when it came up, the city council voted it down at least 2 times.
Yeah,
And I talked to the city council, a couple of people, why it was voted down, but it keeps coming back.
great.
They said they had no option because of the conversation that the mayor at that time had with Pine View and locked them in. I go, so why keep voting it down? Because our message loud and clear is not accepted by everybody in the community. But it still had to go through.
So is this an active item that's gonna come before us for approval?
And if so, oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, you.
So we have John can talk about the specifics of the grant. We have a grant that's going to help us do this with the city. We have the matching funds available. We have a contractor on board who's doing the design for us, who's helping us through the requirements that it's no small feat to move a big detention basin just because there's flood mitigation requirements. There's a number of different requirements to do. And it's just taken a long time to meet the requirements of the design and the requirements of the open houses that we have to meet, all of the individual elements for the grant. So we're working through it. The changeover from city engineer to city engineer didn't help because there was some knowledge lost and then ramp up in what we have to do. But our current city engineer is putting a lot of pressure to say that this is a project the city wants to see happen and will be beneficial for us. So we've seen preliminary designs come through. They have specific requirements to meet on these open houses and public components of it. And then it will move forward. But as of right now, it's still in preliminary, it's not preliminary, it's in design, basically like, I don't know, 30% design or something to that effect. And
Please let me know what I can do to help move that forward. Just personally, I would be very interested in seeing that come to.
John can help us out.
So in theory, it's ready to bid for construction in 9 months. So it's a brand new NRCS program. It's taken 5 years to get through what should have been a year process. We are 3 months from the end of that year process because the public open house was last week. And there's a 3-month notice and comment resolution, wrap it all up. And then there's a 6-month design phase, which is where we move from the 30% to the 100% design. And then we would be bidding it in theory next spring. So next spring, early summer.
Do we have the support of the city council? Do we
Yes,
know, has that been green lighted by them?
yes. So we got a ramp grant
Okay,
for it. And the way it is, I'm trying to find a good picture.
well, you look at it, I'm gonna give my commentary on this. This is not just, I think, gonna be a great asset to our community, which it will be, but it also makes financial sense to me because it takes a pond or a retention basin that's sitting on prime commercial land and moves it away from that and allows the city to then develop some commercial there, receive tax dollars and move this pond back into a residential area.
My question is, what, I don't want to sound lazy here, but what is our hope for gain debating this tonight or discussing?
I was just interested.
Yeah, I don't know
Well,
either,
it's, the reason that I brought it up is that we're operating with the MPC development agreement for Patriot Point, and there's a few development agreements that are going through. So on Monday, it came up from the developer that they had right and interest or ability to offload their storm detention water into this pond. And which is fine. We all agreed with that. That was part of the process. This is a regional detention basin, and you can think about detention basins as they march down the hill as like wide spots in the street. So they hold water and then they meter it out like your bathtub does when the bathtub gets full so it doesn't spill over. And then that water finds its way into another pond and into another pond. So they work like a string of pearls, and this being a regional detention basin, this will collect water from a huge swath of this area of the city. So that was always fine. We had the capacity to do it. When it came down to the design, 5 years later, from development agreement at Patriot Point to our designers working on it, the floor of the water, or I guess the floor of the bathtub overflow didn't work between the two elevations. So what would have happened is if this project to the west of the pond had outflowed their water, and then we had a really high water year and the pond filled up, their detention basin would have been the spot where all of the water flowed out into. So we would have created a flooding issue. So now they're rethinking what they need to do, and we're limited in what we can do. We can't just dig our pond lower. There's hydrology and all sorts of other stuff that we're dealing with. So it became a bit of a debate on Monday during the sort of like semi pre-construction meeting for the subdivision. And I wanted to bring it up just in case the developer brought it up, because they, have their development agreement that says certain things. So we'll work through that process ultimately. So the pond discussion, it's in the center of Patriot Point and in this whole development as a whole, but it's a city project that we're moving forward, we're pushing for, and we want to see happen from one, it will improve water detention in the area, and then also be an amenity that's usable. So instead of that water sitting out there on 2600 North that's behind a fence and you really can't or shouldn't access it, when we have high water years like we did this year, where water will sit in that and stay in it, then people will be able to go out and paddleboard and have water activities, or just be out and enjoy the water, like from the shoreline, basically.
Public comment.
Oh, no.
As a community architect, I love the fact that it brings people together and provide a place to become neighborly that we lack so greatly in our currently designed communities.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to say that from the public,
Thank you.
that it is very, very beneficial to your community.
Yeah, my comment on that was, please don't fence it, and please don't do all those things that we've done to every other body of water around
It will be fenced.
Ah,
It has to be.
It has to be.
Anything, any
Yeah.
detention
Tell me why
basin
it has
deeper
to
than, any
Safety.
detention basin deeper than 3 feet has to be fenced.
According to state rule,
To say-
but we can open it and close it. We just have to be able to lock it when we want to.
Put it wherever.
But you will be able to go out and utilize it. And right now, I mean,
But
things
a
that are.
pond, it doesn't need to be, a retention basin,
Yeah.
but a pond doesn't.
Just give the dog crap off.
Change it.
Okay,
On,
we can talk about
It
that.
has a specific function that the money that we're using cuts into it. But there's other things that we're talking about with the design of this, like how steep is the bank going to be? What is the makeup of the bank going into the water? Like, how do you actually walk down and utilize the water short of just those like launch, entry and exit points specifically? So there's a lot of the design that's left to be done, but it will be fenced. We'll have some streetscape amenities along 150 East as it goes north. Hopefully we'll have some street trees and other things that kind of soften that, and we'll have well, I don't know what kind of fencing right now it's being considered, but it will be a public amenity.
It'll be at least a vinyl dipped fence or better. That's in the
Okay.
development agreement.
But still chain under that vinyl.
Yeah.
The hard part is maintenance for like wrought iron and stuff is,
I understand.
it's
It's
hard.
expensive. That's why we thus avoid a fence, but I'll let you guys battle that out. You have my opinion. Other remarks? Commissioners, I hated to hijack all your remarks. Anybody have anything else?
I think staff needs to be commended again. I think the work that it sounds like they've done with the developer here is taking a complex project, and I think the combination of what staff is doing is helping this project. I mean, I do agree with what you said, Mace, that the fact that people aren't here with pitchforks is probably a function of you having the meetings with them and staff doing the work to get this going in the right direction. And I think with this pond, detention pond, the same thing is happening. And so I think staff deserves a lot of credit here for organizing things in a way that they have the ability to do that everything doesn't have to come before us. And when it comes before us, it's a little more orderly and kind of working with, multi-stakeholders here to make sure that we're moving things forward and things aren't just sitting. Because we do have a community where there is demand. We do have a community that has population. But if staff can't work with the people who actually want to move dirt and they don't get the 7-month deadline, things won't happen. And because they'll do it in a place that's a little easier to work with. And so I think staff gets a lot of credit for what you guys are doing. I want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnson. Okay, other remarks? How about a remark from our economic development director?
So we are still searching for planner 1 and planner 2. We did interview somebody. We're gonna have another conversation with that person. But it's been difficult to fill that position. We've also, the planning commission has been slow. We haven't had a lot of new subdivisions or items going before the planning commission, but the department has still remained busy. So building permits have stayed steady, business licenses have stayed steady, land use permits, and then just lots and lots of, calls that come in all the time. So property out there's a lot more property available, which leads to lots of real estate calls and conversations about development and interest about development, but we just haven't seen that turn into project applications yet. So I'm a little bit, I'm thinking about, do we hire somebody now and kind of like ramp them up while it's slow, or wait until after the first of the year and kind of, because this is our time when typically development begins to slow down and we slow down as a department. So that's to be seen. The other just update for the planning commission is we got our state required report done for the moderate income housing plan. We did not have to update our moderate income housing plan this year, but there was a required report that was due August 1st. And if you were delinquent on, would have potentially pulled our B and C road funding, which is what Public Works relies on for maintenance projects of our city streets. Essentially, I mean, it's a huge carrot and stick that the state has now. That report has gone in. I haven't heard yet from them whether or not we filled it out correctly and we pass or fail, but we'll find out. I'll report back to the planning commission members. And then also just wanted to note that the Utah APA conference is coming up and it is being hosted in Ogden in fall. We have budget for planning commission members to attend. It's September 28th and 29th. If you can put that on your calendars, we'll send that out. The registration is available, but I'll send an email out to planning commission members, see if you want to attend. It's at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. I'm hoping that you can attend. Should be really good information. And hopefully see most of us there since it's right in our own backyard this time.
Probably need a hotel.
It's a rough drive, yeah. There's a number of conference hotels if you need one. But we will, as part of your training, this would take care of the remainder of the training for the planning commission for the year if you are able to attend, and that would be a really good place to take that up. And that's all the comments I have.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from our city manager or city attorney?
No, it's just good to see you all again,
It's been a while.
you
It's been
know.
a great break. I mean, I love it all. I appreciate working.
There is lots of exciting things going on. You are going to be seeing more park site plan approvals this year than you've seen in a long time. So in fact, we need to probably get the Loman View Park in front of you pretty quick. That's pickleball. And then it'll be a phase 2 of that that will include a upgrade to the playground area as well. So, but we've got that playground or that park. The new Waterworks Park is what I've started calling it, but we can pick a new name for it. That'll go next to the old Public Works building. It's tied into the farm subdivision development that was approved. There's the pond. There's one more, or the trailhead. I guess you've already approved the trailhead, but the bathrooms are going in on the trailhead on Friday, I believe. And then the pavement will be coming in the next month.
There's parking out here.
It's what? Oh, and then, yeah, there'll be a site plan for the parking adjustment out here. It was the old police building comes down. We obviously need to do something different. And Eric's drawn up a concept that adds 48 stalls, which will be helpful for if you ever try to be here on a court day. Hopefully you haven't had to come on court day, but it gets pretty full around.
You know,
So,
regarding this complex, within our field trip today, one of those consultants kept talking about picking up City Hall and moving it, and actually moving it to the corner of that, you know, behind where the old Macy's was. So, and that being a gathering place. And man, I can't get that out of my head because we're cramped for space here. Parking's terrible. We can't, and I know it's been voted down by the residents before, and so, but I'll just, since this is just loose comments, you know, when a hot ticket item, when a gondola needs to be discussed, this building does not fit it. And if we were ever going to expand, and I hate to lose our green space and stuff out here, picking up City Hall and moving it down to that plaza, that creates a space down there. And I'm just throwing it out there.
well, no, and that's good feedback. And then also more than likely, this group and the council will be meeting in the courtroom in the new public safety building.
Okay,
And it's at least twice the size of this space.
okay.
But it'll be more comfortable, different new chairs.
But it does nothing for Southtown Plaza.
Right, that's true. Yeah. So,
Is that all done?
Yep.
Okay,
This Waterworks Park, where did you say that was at? Is it like a splash pad?
so it won't be splash pad, but well, it won't be, it'll be more of an interactive water play.
Okay.
We're still trying to figure out with the health department, whether the artesian water that comes out clean is good enough or we have to use chlorinated. In theory, the artesian water would come out, go down some channels and kids could divert it and play with it.
And where exactly is that gonna be?
Just west of the old public works.
Oh, cool.
The Century Farms Park.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of
perfect.
water.
Yeah.
That should be a plaza also,
Well, and
as when we cap the road there.
And there is still talk with the council about how do we create something over there with the stump in this park to make it
Mhm.
function.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Cap the road. My sister-in-law hate me, but that needs to happen. She'll hate me.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I think I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourned.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, voice vote?
Bye.
Any opposed?